Hey, thank you so much for letting me be able to come in and have this conversation with you and then be able to post it on our service. So for those that are watching that are not familiar with who you are, what are your names? Could you introduce yourselves?
Bill Christensen and my wife Sue.
Excellent. How long have you been attending the church?
Um, 15 years.
Wow, 15 years. Okay. Now, just in short, if you can, in about 30 seconds, and I know that's really hard, but we'll unpack this later on. What happened to Bill last fall?
November 9th, Bill went to the hospital in a BP crisis, a blood pressure crisis. And we thought he was going to get some medicine, maybe an inhaler, something like that. He couldn't breathe. He ended up being admitted, and long story short, 11 days later had open heart surgery.
And how many? And so you had bypass surgery as well. How many bypasses?
Five-way bypass.
Wow. Okay. Just dealing with that health crisis alone, how did you? What was God teaching you in that?
I just surrendered and crammed my brain into my heart and gave it to Jesus and pictured myself coming through the surgery either perfectly healed or perfect in heaven. So it was like I just surrendered and gave myself to him to do with what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it, and here I am.
Amen. So my question is, to be more specific, how long have you been out of work then, Bill?
I was 26 weeks, and then I went to work for 2 weeks and
4 days.
4 days, and then now I have type 2 diabetes, so I can't drive truck on insulin.
And it's unregulated right now. He's checking his blood sugars every 4 hours and doing insulin as well as some oral medications and another injection. So he's out of work again.
Okay. So not only were you dealing with the physical side effects of everything that went on in a health crisis, but now you're dealing with a financial crisis. So in the middle of all of this, one of the reasons we're having this conversation is you were at church, and during one of the messages, you told me that God just kind of touched your hearts and said, "I want you to trust me." Could you explain that a little bit?
Want me to?
Yeah.
So going back to the day that we found out Bill was going to have open heart surgery, it felt like, because this will play into that message, it felt like in a movie when you see something and it goes and it like zeroes in on the person with everything coming in, and I felt like it was just Bill and I, and then I felt like God was saying, it's not just you and Bill, it's going to be you and Bill and me. And we prayed together and decided that we were going to have to trust the Lord. So then when we were in church and we were listening to the message, and I honestly can't remember exactly what the message was, but I felt like the same thing, like God was saying, this is where the rubber meets the road. You tell people that you believe in me, and you tell people that I'm going to meet your needs, and I am asking you to obey me now and surrender this and let me meet your needs.
And he did, always.
He did, and I would be completely lying if I said that I said to the Lord, "Oh yeah, fine, that's okay, we can do that." I had peace. I had complete peace. Well, of course I know where it came from. It came from the Lord, but I thought I had to muster that up. I thought I was the one.
You had to muster the peace up.
The peace up, that I was going to have to be like, okay, I'm going to have peace and this is going to happen. But it was that total that we pray for, inexplainable peace that passes all understanding. And Bill and I talked about it, that we're going to have to live what we say we believe. And we had a choice to make, because we could choose to go through this whole thing and go through kicking and screaming. I mean, it was going to happen, or he was going to die. So we could go through the whole thing kicking and screaming, or we could go through it and say, total surrender. And I'm not a surrender kind of person.
Okay. So Well, I get, again, we're going to unpack this a little bit more physically and everything that was going on, but the Lord really told you because you were thinking, oh no, we're going to be bankrupt.
Right.
And we sat down and we prayed during this time, and,
Oh, yeah.
and we asked you on several occasions, how can the church come alongside of you? Is there anything that you need? And you told me flat out, we don't want to do that yet.
Right.
Why? Why did you not want to do that yet? What was it?
Everything was falling into place, and we were getting support from friends, and getting money from,
An insurance policy.
yeah, and it was just like, I decided I didn't need my Camaro, so I wanted to sell it. She said, no, you can't sell it because you're going to end up upside down in your next rig, and it all worked out so that I got a month off from the Camaro payment, and then took a month before I started the new payment on the new vehicle, the used new vehicle that I got, that's
Costs less too.
right, and a lot less to insure, and there were some things that I sold that helped us to get through.
But we, I don't mean to interrupt, but we also got excited about seeing what God was doing. When you would say to us, what do you need? What can we give to you? And we talked about it, and we both felt like
we had so much groceries we could barely put it all away from people bringing stuff.
We felt like we didn't want to pull the pin yet because we said we were going to trust God, and we didn't feel like God was saying to us, and just to clarify, trusting God doesn't mean not asking for help. But we didn't feel like in that particular point when you would ask us that, which we so appreciate, but we didn't feel like at that moment it was time for us to say,
we had more than we needed.
yeah.
Okay, so how, just kind of go through like 5 or 6 things that God did to show you exactly that he was in absolute control.
The tires.
Specifically
The
financially.
tires.
So we needed tires for my car. And this is another in-church thing. I'm starting to panic. And I don't know why when we're in church, that's when I panic. Nighttime in church. Because, we're surrounded by God all the time. I guess maybe that's why God is just saying to me, see, you got to just trust me regardless of where you are. So I leaned over to Bill partway through the service and I said, I'm going to need tires for my car. It needs to be inspected because we had talked about it not passing inspection. So we decided we'd pray about it. So we just started praying about it. And in the beginning, it was kind of like, okay, Lord, Sue needs tires for her car. What are you going to do about it? But then
2 days later.
But then we started really praying specifically about the tires for the car.
And this was like a month early.
Right. And we didn't say anything to anybody. We decided I feel like we grew more as a couple and more as individuals. So we decided we were going to pray together and we said nothing to anybody. So on a Sunday morning, our neighbor comes over and says, I got some of your mail by accident. And I opened it and it was a handwritten letter from someone saying, this is extra money that God had given to us. And I prayed and he told me to give it to you. And we read this going to church and almost needed to pull over because it was that, like, seriously.
It was just enough for the tires.
Amen.
Yeah.
4 tires.
So if you like what we're talking about right now here, check us out on Hope Community Chapel, our Facebook page, or Hope Community Chapel, the YouTube channel as well. And we'll continue to have this conversation there, the full length of it. We're going to cut this first part and put it in the service. You can watch the rest of it as we continue on. So unpack that a little bit more. Not only were you dealing with finances and just the tires, but what about mortgage? What about, lights and hot water and everything like that? How did God just continue to supply your needs?
So before this all happened, Bill and I had not always been super great with our with our budgeting. Our intention was always to be really good with our budgeting. And we would set up a budget, we'd follow it to a certain point, and then something shiny would come along and we would chase it off. And it's something that we both felt like we really needed to work on. So we've been where we are now for almost 3 years. And when we moved in, we sat down and we talked about it, and we set up a couple of budgets and would rip it up and throw it away. They just weren't working. So we ultimately came to a budget that worked. And I keep thinking about the verse in the Bible that about the ant in Proverbs that plans for the future and puts their stuff away, and the sluggard doesn't. And so we had started a budget process 3 years earlier of budgeting everything. We budgeted our groceries. I mean, to the point where all of our paychecks are split in either quarters or halves. And we have it set up so the bank sends the money out to all of our creditors. And with that, we'd been able to pay a couple things off, which was really helpful. But we also were beginning to build a credit. We built a credit with our fuel company. We built a credit with the electric company. We paid ahead a little bit on, and all by accident, but God knew. And we didn't know then that this was happening for now. We just did this. It also built a credit with vehicles, not a huge one, but enough so that our creditors knew that we were paying our bills. But it paid us enough ahead on electricity and on fuel so that we, in the wintertime when this happened, when normally I would be really upset and concerned about it, we could seriously sit back and relax because we knew our heat was paid for.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, a couple of times they sent money back.
Yeah, we got money back because we overpaid a couple of things. I mean, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So that helped pay for medical bills and other things that you needed at that point in time that you didn't know where it was coming from.
Exactly. And the day that once we found out that he was having the open heart surgery, and it was like falling down a hill. We went to the hospital, they fast tracked everything. I tell people it's like we got to the hospital and he was this little soft egg that they carried around and took him where he needed to be. And every time we would go into a different room or a different doctor would come in, it was more bad news. It was, oh, you've got this going on, or you've got that going on. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. So in the very beginning, I panicked. I mean, I did. I panicked. My head was spinning. I was seeing dollar signs. And I want to back up and say that, so I carry the insurance through my employer, and I had talked to Bill, needed to be in for October. We had to have the insurance in October for this year. So I had talked to Bill and said, I don't know, I'm making a little bit less money where I'm working now. Maybe we should go down to the lesser tier of coverage. And so we talked about it. I prayed about it. I know Bill did. And we decided to go down. This happened. I went down on the coverage, which means our deductible is higher. The coverage is the same. It's just that we pay more now is the bottom line. And that needed to be in, I think it was Halloween was when it needed to be in. October 9th is the day that Bill went to the hospital. And I can remember thinking when he was on the treadmill test and I was in his room waiting for him, thinking, I prayed about this. I asked you, Lord. This is not a decision that I made lightly. You told me to go to my husband, that my husband is my leader. I did this. I did everything you told me to do and went totally against who I am because I'm used to going rogue and I like to try and be the leader. Shocking. And I did everything you told me to do, and here we are. And I used to book these exams, so I know how much they cost. And I mean, I was scared. But again, it was almost like God was audibly saying to me, I got this. Do you trust me? Mm-hmm. And after a while, it wasn't, do you trust me? I felt like God was saying, you have to trust me.
That was the only option.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had Aflac.
Yes, that's right.
So that helped a lot through the winter.
It
carried us.
Yep, it covered almost all of his income. So even though he wasn't working, we were still getting paid, and that also helped too with our bills. So
So don't pass up Aflac. Aflac's a
It's
good
kind of commercial.
So how has this helped you grow spiritually together?
Oh, couldn't be better. I mean, I don't think there's anything that could make you grow more
Yeah.
quicker than what we've been through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the ways is that again, when I was waiting for Bill to come back from his stress test, and he came back to the hospital room, and I remember the girl pushing him in the wheelchair, and he said, "Okay, thanks," and hops out of the wheelchair and goes over and gets in his bed, and I said, "How was it?" And he just started crying.
Yeah.
So I started crying because it was bad.
Yeah.
And
At that point, I was ready to just die until Alex told the nurses and doctors they needed to leave, and he changed my mind.
but specifically, spiritually for us, we normally in that type of a situation under high stress, we'll talk about things. I try and get my way. He tries to make me understand his way, and we would dissolve into an argument because it's stressful and everybody wants their own way. But we both looked at each other and we said, we need to pray.
Yeah.
We both said we don't know what else to do. We need to pray. And
it was a cement overpass that we ran into and woke you right up.
And I don't even remember. I know we both prayed. Can't tell you what we said. It wasn't one of those kind of
I
prayers.
don't know how many times I woke up in the hospital with you sitting there looking at me.
I would like to say that you're pretty, but
And then I'd always have you'd just leave and they'd say, "Oh, would you like to have somebody come in and see you that's religious?" I'm like, "No, all set. You just left." And I have a one-on-one relationship with Jesus, so.
Amen. I can't tell you the number of times I'd come in and you'd just be finishing having a conversation, or you'd be sleeping and somebody would say, "Oh, you Bill's pastor," or whatever. So you were just talking up a storm while you were.
Yeah, they were probably sick of me.
So what would you tell people who are either struggling physically because of their health, financially because they've lost their job or whatever, something of that nature? They're just not making it. They're not budgeting. They're doing whatever, but they're just struggling financially, or they're struggling in their marriage because they're just always bickering and arguing with each other, and they're not following God's direction for their lives. They think they are. They love Jesus.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. They love Jesus, but they're just clashing at every turn, either physically, financially, or even in their marriages. What would you share with
I would
those?
say you need to evaluate yourself and pick out all the flaws that you need to get rid of to be the good husband or the good wife, and to pray about it and give it to Jesus and just do the best you can. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of work, and you got to both be on the same page, or it doesn't really work if you're not both willing to surrender and let Jesus take over and run things.
Bill, in the middle of this, what's the biggest lesson that you learned about God through all of this?
About God.
Yeah.
Well, I always focus on Jesus, because to get to God, you got to go through Jesus to get to God. So till I'm in heaven perfect, I just focus on Jesus.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, are you interviewing me now?
Yeah.
What would you tell folks about that? What would you want them to know? Those three areas.
The three areas, once again, I'm sorry.
Physical,
Yep.
Financial, and marital.
Yep. So for physical, you really think that I should rephrase it this way. I think I can control things, and I can't control my body. I can control what I eat and how I treat it. But even then, learning that God created me, the verse about being fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's another thing that God keep taking me back to. God made Bill knowing this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so physically, no matter what I do, I mean, I need to take care of myself, but no matter what I do, God created each one of us for a purpose. So God created Bill, knit him in his mother's womb 55 years ago, knowing that this was going to happen. And after the anger of, why did this happen? Of, okay, so that verse is really true. It's not just, oh, it's a baby, it's so beautiful, but this is true. And financially, God threw us in the deep end, and I just had to trust him. I mean, I
Did he ever fail you?
no, and just at the point where I said to Bill, it's like our freezer. We take food out, and someone comes in at night and puts food in. It's like we've got this bottomless freezer that we just can't get rid of this food. I mean, not that we wanted to, but it was like, where is this coming from? And I would open up the pantry to go get something and say to Bill, I can't believe this. We have,
Where did this come from?
right. And we sometimes we'd pull something out and say, where did this come from? But God did not financially get us to the end of that diving board, or we didn't know we were at the end of the diving board until, let me rephrase that, as we approached the end of the diving board, we just thought, okay, God's taken care of us this far. And we actually reached a point where we were through the Aflac money. I think we had $13 in our bank account, and we both said, okay. And normally I would have never told Bill that. I would have kept that from him and just said, we're fine. So going to the marriage part of it, being really honest. Okay, Bill, we've got $13. I know we're praying about this. Let's continue to pray, and let's not get scared. Or praying and saying, and we wouldn't necessarily sit down and pray like that moment together, but we there were times that we would, but saying, okay, I know this is going to be okay, and boom, our tax return hits our account. So we went from $13 to, okay, we're going to be okay. This is going to replace another couple of weeks of work for you. No, God never ever let us down. And he did not even allow me to get scared. Once we were in it, once we were in the whole process of everything and in the whole mess,
Also, colitis scared you a little.
yeah, that scared me. But I feel like for a long time my fear button was turned off.
Okay.
That somewhere God just flipped a switch and turned on the faith button that, okay, I'm gonna do this. And it doesn't mean that I didn't.
And she, in the past, way before all this ever happened, she would go on a tizzy like somebody squirting ether and just. I have to take her to her father
True story.
many times.
But
Like throwing
God
a
gave
match
us
on
both.
the
Yeah.
gasoline.
But God gave us both so much calm.
So to finish that
Yes.
thought up, what would you say would be the overarching lesson you learned about God through all of this so far?
Would be that not only is he faithful, but the Bible's really real. The Bible is really
What do
real.
you mean it's real?
Yeah. I mean, those verses that I've prayed a million times for friends going through things. Oh, give her the peace that passes understanding, and, help them to feel your presence. And you pray for that, and you want that for them, but it's sort of out there, and
they gotta want it too to receive it.
well, no, God gives it to us, but what I mean is I've prayed for that, and I don't think I've ever been in either. I don't know. I guess I haven't experienced, or I haven't.
But you know God more intimately than you've ever known before.
Yeah,
He's been faithful.
absolutely faithful.
He did everything that he said he was going to do, and more.
And more.
So he's real.
Yeah.
He's really real.
It's a miracle.